How was how was everyone's week?
Much better. It's good.
Good, good.
It's good. Went and saw
Oh,
the
are we
movie.
starting
Did you
now?
guys see the movie?
Is this? Are we
Yeah, we're
recording
yeah
now?
we're yeah,
So
we're recording, Brian. Way to.
Well,
is this thing on? Is
well,
this
we
thing
didn't
on?
do
I don't.
we didn't do the opener.
Yeah. I mean, we've got a couple of those
I'll
recorded.
splice it in.
Welcome in. You're listening to Mount Hermeneutics, where three Marines talk about God, faith, and spirituality with a heavy lean on the divine council worldview. Now, this is not your grandma's Sunday school, nor is it always for the faint of heart. There's nothing about who we are or what we say that make us experts, but you better believe that we're going to have a take, and perhaps it won't suck.
But yeah, so the movie was good. So first of all, for us, we went to see it, and I went with a pretty big group. There was about 9, 10 of us, and we went to dinner first, and then we all went and watched the movie. And it was at a theater I'd never been to. It was like in the hood, and so like, where the hell are we going? And so apparently it's the only place that was showing it. I don't know if it's all this conspiracy about, AMC's out to get the whatever the name of the company is that produced the movie or whatever. But
Angel Studios.
Angel Studios, yeah. But we pull up and I'm looking around and I'm like, yeah, good thing I concealed carry around here because it was going to be sketch when we came out. But then I go into the theater and it's like has super nice motorized reclining all leather seats and everything. It was super pleasant. So I didn't have any, my AC didn't go off. The movie didn't shut off in the middle of it, right? It went through. One couple got up and left in the middle. I don't think they knew what they were getting into emotionally when they bought tickets to watch it. But yeah, I thought it was really good. Austin went with us and my son. And right as the movie was over, I was sitting there thinking about it. Also, he looks at me and he goes, "These children actors were amazing." And I was like, "Right."
Right?
That little girl,
Right?
man, like I bought every bit of the emotion that she was that she
Yeah.
was that she was selling. Like it felt real. And then I mentioned it to Carrie and my wife. I'm saying that, by the way, for those at home, not for the two that I'm talking to. But she made the comment that she had read somewhere that those two kids are in like therapy because of
The
how
the
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 two child
actors.
actors, yeah, yeah, like
Huh.
because of what they
Well,
what they went through
it,
psychologically to prepare for the role and to do the role.
well, what happened? Well, according to the producer, he was talking about how they had therapists that were on set to work with the children. Well, one day they got a new one, and they say, "Hey,
New
listen, we
therapist or
just
a new
needed to
kid?
cry." A new
Okay,
therapist. We just needed to cry so we can get this take. The famous bathtub scene, right?
yeah.
So so um, she starts crying,
Hmm.
and the director's like, "This is great." Like, boom, we got it in one take. We're awesome. She's amazing. Let's move on to the next thing. And then the little girl didn't stop crying.
Because she got
She
so
just kept
into it,
crying.
she was like legit crying.
Well, here's what happened. Since the new therapist or the child handler was new, they didn't really know the rules. So this guy relayed to the child exactly who they were
Oh.
playing. So they
Oh
were trying to keep the
no.
kids safe from that and just give them random things to cry
Oh,
about. It's
Yeah.
like, oh,
There's
you're
a.
playing a kid that was actually never going to see her dad again, and all that. Like, and then that got the emotion out, but she didn't know that that was her role because they were trying to protect the kids. So
mm.
once that got out, it looks like maybe the kids shared some stuff, and now they're in
They
therapy.
pieced it all together and realized what the hell it
Yeah.
was that was going on in the movie. Yeah. Well, it made
Wow.
it made
So
me think like, you know, we've come a long ways. So, in our society, and the three of us do it, everybody does it, right? We like to make fun of how everything's a mental this and everything's needs therapy. But we have definitely gone down this continuum of if you think about 50s, 60s, nobody got therapists, nobody cared about mental health, right? 80s and 90s, 2000s, we started to realize maybe it was a real thing. And then now it's too much, right? Like now everything's therapy related. But it makes me wonder like how many child actors developed all of the problems that they developed with, drugs and alcohol and all of that. If how much of that was trauma from the roles they played forget about Hollywood and all the crap that comes along with Hollywood, but how much of that, like, you're playing a kid who's been, possessed by Satan, and the kid's like, oh my God, and then the kid's going home and thinking about it because he's like, I know exactly what that would look like because my director told me what it would look like, and now I'm, it's too personal. I don't know. It was just something I thought about.
Yeah,
Linda
I
Blair
mean,
turned out okay.
Say again.
Linda Blair
did she?
turned out okay.
I'm not sure she did.
I don't know.
So, yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, she's old now, so we don't know anymore.
Yeah.
I know that personally, I probably saw that movie a lot different than a 25-year-old me would have saw that.
100%.
And I would have been impacted for sure. But the things, I mean, I imagine, because I took Delaney on a date night.
Not really a good date night. Wasn't a real good feel-good movie.
That didn't really get her in the mood for later that evening.
No.
So I put my rescue suit on, like maybe my marine gear, then that got her back. But I think I know for me, the parts that really impacted me the most was every time the father was on screen, the father of the two of the brother and sister. That's probably not Delaney's, thing.
Right.
Or what impacted her the most. Just as for watching, I could hear her react sitting next to me, and then then I would react to something else.
Yeah, I definitely it definitely has to affect everybody differently, right? It was funny because the dad obviously got me, but I got more. So the part that got me, this is actually going to be a long share as I explain this, but if you guys will indulge me. What got me was when the strength that, and by the way, let's do this real fast. For anybody that hasn't seen the movie, if you're watching or listening to this, we're about to spoil the crap out of the movie, right? So if you don't like spoilers and you haven't seen it, maybe you might want to hit pause and go watch it and then pick this back up later so we can kind of talk about, because we're going to talk about the movie pretty freely. I think that's fair to say. So you've been warned, right? We can't do this without spoiling it. So anyway,
we could save that to the end and talk about the more abstract takeaways from it. About we could do that first and then save the spoilers for the end. But
I mean, we can. I mean, I don't care. I didn't think about. I don't know how. I didn't really structure a discussion, so I don't really know what to talk about that would be spoilerish versus not.
Well, I mean, we could talk about the media reaction to it.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, that's fine. Spoiler alert has been rescinded. We're back at DEFCON 1.
It has been held in abeyance.
Oh no, 4. I'm sorry. We're back at DEFCON 4. Wait, which one's bad?
I think it's
the lower number is the most dangerous.
Right, yeah. We're back at 4. Yeah, we're at regular operating procedure.
All right. So yeah, I've seen a lot of coverage of this is I think anybody who's paying attention to the news has seen this, but it's worth kind of noting because it's relevant to our main jam about the divine council worldview. We live in a world ruled by demons. If you need any more evidence, if you need evidence for that, look no further than the coverage surrounding this. Mainstream media dismisses it as a right-wing conspiracy theory. I mean, this is publicly documented.
Yeah, I thought that was really crazy to see some of those comments like that. Like this stuff isn't real. Like it doesn't really happen. Like this guy didn't actually do ostensibly, or broadly speaking, what the movie portrayed. He did those things. Maybe not in that sequence. Maybe not in that time frame. Whatever. But he did those things. And it's not even arguable, right? Like it's a matter of public record, the stuff that this guy's done. So it's really weird that the media is acting like they basically use the same straw man attack as they did for the Chris Pratt series on Prime, the Terminal List.
Oh yeah, it's a right-wing power fantasy, but
it's a revenge fantasy is what they called that one. Yeah.
Except
did you guys see Terminal List?
Yes.
Yeah, I did.
I enjoyed it thoroughly.
I thought it was great.
It was a good show. But it was really dark. But unlike Terminal List, I thought there'd be. Well, I'll save that to the end. I thought there'd be more violence.
They did that on purpose. It was only PG-13. They wanted it to be kid friendly as that can be. So that begs a question. So without spoiling it, what age would you guys take a kid to see that?
I don't have kids.
So what would you think as a non-parent?
I mean, I would think as soon as they're old enough to watch movies with villains and understand that I wouldn't want to traumatize them, but I would want my kids to be exposed to that as early as they can understand it, so they understand that I'll never tell my kid that there's no such thing as monsters, because there absolutely are.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, but they're like cockroaches and rats. They hide they skitter away and hide in the shadows when the lights come on. We're to be cautious with them, but not give them the power over us of fearing them. But yeah, kids need to understand that there are monsters out in the world, and I don't think you're doing them any favors by telling them there aren't.
Yeah, Dre, what do you think? And before you answer, I have a more complex add to the question. What age do you think you would have taken your own kids, and at what age would you take your grandkids?
Okay. I think that this is a mature movie with mature topics, mature subject matter. They would have to be in middle school. My own children, and same with my grandchildren. Really, 13 I think is kind of appropriate, and then it's a matter of, do I know my 13-year-old well enough?
Yeah.
Look, I think the movie's rated PG-13 to get grandmas to watch it, to get babysitters to watch it, to get religious people to watch it, and not be distracted by violence, because the subject matter is powerful enough. You know, it's interesting, when I watched the movie The Conjuring for the first time, I saw that it was rated R. So I looked it up. I'm like, because I watched it, I was like, what about this movie is rated R? And it was because it was scary. That was actually the reason why it was rated R, because it was scary. So to me, that's
a very subjective rating to use.
I think that you can make children aware of strangers. You can make children aware of surroundings. You can keep children safe without telling them that they're going to be kidnapped by whoever, wherever, and be raped over and over again. I really do. I don't think this is for small children at all.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah. I think I agree with you that 13, 14, middle school is kind of the right thing. You know, the trick about it is, for me, you know, obviously it's younger kids that are just as at risk, but how you don't, you know, it's really too much. Basically, it's just like, don't talk to strangers because I said so. Right, like I don't have to show you gratuitously why, right? No more than I'm going to say, don't touch that gun. They don't need to see video. They don't need to see images of bodies that have been destroyed by firearms to know not to touch a gun, right? Sometimes you just do things because I told you.
Strung out on heroin.
Right.
My thinking is that if the kid's old enough that they're not in your direct control, that you're not. You know, if they're old enough to go out and to sleep over with their friends, or if they're outside of the house, outside of your direct control, and you know, I think whatever age that is, that's kid specific. I couldn't give a number, but I think if you're old enough to be victimized, I think you're old enough to be warned about it.
That little boy was only 8. He was 7 when he was abducted. So
real life, he was only 5.
Really. So here's the thing. Here's kind of one of the thoughts I had about that. The movie wasn't about the dangers of being a kid. That wasn't what the movie. This is my view, right? If you think about we're getting into the spoilers. But like,
just do it, man.
Well,
Yeah.
Do it.
but the start of the movie though is it's not really a spoiler.
so
It's really the dad's fault.
that's
for-
that's kind of a fucked up thing to say, right? Like it was the dad's fault.
if you take your kid to a would you take your 7-year-old kid and just leave them with strangers like that?
They didn't feel like a stranger by that point, dude. He traveled with this woman. They were out of town. They'd got on a bus and went to a different town, and like she had been in his house. Like that was well scripted. That was well done. How that woman contrived the situation, right? Like the dad is to blame. I think I'm stopping short of saying it was his fault, right? Like it was set up very well. But my point is simply he's responsible. Yeah, I mean, it feels indictful when you say it's his fault. But you're right. We're splitting hairs.
I think it's worth I just think it's worth pointing out that they took advantage of his naivete.
Yes.
Not the children.
That was what I was going to say.
I think that's Matt's point.
That's my point. Is this wasn't about the kids screwed up or the kids got into a van with a stranger. The whole movie was about adults not doing the right thing. Right? It's about the dad screwed up, the police screwed up, the State Department or Homeland Security, everybody. It was a symphony of adults not doing what had to happen to keep bad things from happening to kids. Right? It wasn't some kid made a mistake and let the boogeyman in or jumped in somebody's truck, right, and got whisked away. Now, they showed videos at the end, like the real life stuff, right, of that happening, kids getting, yanked off on motorcycles and stuff. But like this wasn't about the kids making a bad decision. This was about a bunch of adults not doing the right thing on both sides, right? So like I don't know, because I don't think I'd show it to a kid younger than 13, 14, but those kids are probably already not at risk for what this was about. This was about little kids, right? This is about children, not about, pubescent teenagers kind of thing. Not that those girls, Taken, a different movie about the similar industry was about those girls were grown for all intents and purposes, right? They were young adults. So I think that's also kind of a thing. Here's a question I have. So Dre, you made the point about The Exorcist or The Conjuring being R because of it being scary. You think PG-13 is a fair rating for this movie? Either Dre's being wildly introspective and thoughtful, or he froze and dropped and we lost Dre.
Yeah, I don't think he's
not breathing.
He hasn't blinked in like many minutes. I guess we lost Dre.
We lost Dre. Well, so Brian, what do you think? You think that PG-13 was fair? I mean, it could have been R, right? Because it's a pretty uncomfortable, gnarly kind of movie.
Was it PG-13?
Yeah.
I would have thought PG would be fine.
You thought PG would have been okay?
Well, I mean, it wasn't.
That means 10-year-olds could just walk in on their own without adult supervision and watch that movie. No, it wasn't. There was never anything. Like you never saw. There he is.
Oh,
hey, welcome back.
I don't know, man. I probably all of my views on this will probably change when I have kids, but I mean, I don't. I'll probably never let them out of my sight till they're 18 anyway.
It's tough. It's tough with the way the world is, right? For sure.
But I mean, it's. Yeah, I mean, but I'm thinking of our ancestors. They didn't hide the unpleasant realities of life from children. Mm-hmm. They were kind of front and center. I mean, your village could be raided at any moment, and it was also just kind of assumed that if a child or an unmarried young woman is not under the supervision of her family, that
she was kind of fair game to the world. Yeah.
Like it was just expected. That's what's going to happen. And so you don't let that happen because they understood that's what the world is. I mean, we live in a lot of this stuff happens because we just have a completely misguided view of reality now. We do live in the Matrix. We're constantly consuming scripted fiction and basing our view of reality on that. And I think that skews our view of the world. You're back.
Dre, you got audio back? Okay, cool.
Okay. Yeah. What? My phone overheated.
Oh.
It just turned off on me. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we saw was a freeze frame of you in very pensive thought. So I asked a question, and you were just sitting there, and I was like, either he's really thinking about that question, or he's frozen and we've lost him. And then we're like, I don't see him breathing.
Anyway, he's dead. He's dead. He had a heart attack. The subject matter was too much for him.
What I asked was, did you think that PG-13 was appropriate rating, given what you made, the comment you made about The Conjuring being R simply because it was scary?
Yes, and I think that I think that's because I think because it's appropriate for Abuelita. That's really my gauge, right? Like old people, Christian people, though the because it really is PG other than the subject matter, right? So,
oh yeah, there was very little violence. There was that one
right.
knife scene, knife fight.
Right.
Was pretty much the only violence, because there was bullets shot, but nobody got shot, right?
Right. Even the sex was insinuated.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God.
Thank God. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but, absolutely.
Yeah. I do. I think R would be too harsh, and mostly it's market value, right? Like, people aren't going to go see it if it's rated R. That's the reason why most of like Marvel movies are rated PG-13 and not R.
Yeah.
Because the audience has to be wide enough. That's why way back.
You say wide or white?
90 wide. Way back in '95 when Mortal Kombat came out, they made the decision to make that movie rated PG-13 to reach a bigger audience, when clearly that should have been rated R, and it would have been way freaking.
The video game was rated R, for God's sake.
Exactly.
Not a single person's spine got ripped out of their body in that movie.
Total ripoff.
I want to see a heart ripped out of a chest and beating in this
hand. How many kids walked out of that theater going, the game was better than the movie?
This is bullshit. I was 20 and I was still like, this is bullshit.
Well, but that's I mean, but I think part of the difference is, like, when you do a movie like that, you have a young audience, right? I don't think the goal. I think you might have a fair point about it. The target audience was older versus younger. That might be a fair point, because I didn't think about that. That the grandparents need to be able to go see it, kind of thing.
And it gives parents an option, because this is what I was going to mention earlier too. I think if I had a child younger than 13 to watch this movie, it would be on home video, where I would be on the couch.
So you could talk them through it, hit pause.
Talk through it, right? Yeah. And so I think if a father felt appropriate to bring his 13 or 14-year-old child to this movie and kind of be there and supervise this thing, I think it. I mean, you can do that with rated R too, but it's it's a lot easier and more accepting for a parent to do that.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
I think my big issue with the media criticizing this movie was one. Let's just say that Tim Ballard did none of these things.
Okay.
Right? Let's say that Jim Caviezel is this big QAnon guy, which perhaps he is. Right? It just makes me think, like, if I'm driving down the road and somebody on the other side of the highway flashes his lights because he's warning me that there's a speed trap up ahead, am I like, babe, did that truck have a MAGA sticker on it? That's false information. Like, I'm not slowing down. F that guy. He's a racist.
Yeah.
Right? No, man. I want to see those warning signs no matter who gives them.
Right.
Even if I disagree on much of their life.
Right.
Also, the criticism was about accurate portrayals, and I'm like, well, coming from the same people who shot the Woman King up the rankings, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing true about that thing. Says the same people who praised Jada Pinkett Smith for having a black Cleopatra, because the Ptolemies were all black. We knew that, right?
Well, yeah. And they're really kind of feeding the conspiracy theory themselves when they do that, though. I mean,
I agree.
When they rush to condemn it as a right-wing fever dream and conspiracy theory, my first impulse is, well, why are they so defensive about this? And I don't think that's unreasonable. I mean, with all the stories coming out of Hollywood from former child actors who, like Corey Feldman and Elijah Wood, and I forget all the names of the child
There's
actors.
A ton of them.
On this, but
ton of
there's
them,
a ton
right?
of them.
Yeah.
Who,
all of them.
Who insist that Hollywood is infested with pedophiles. And if you've never read up on this, read up on how the actress who played Carol Ann in Poltergeist, she died at a very young age under very suspicious circumstances. I don't want to get into details, but if somebody has the interest and reads up on that, it's creepy and weird, and it should. It puts this whole this criticism of Sound of Freedom into perspective. They're clearly defensive for some reason. And if you follow all the stuff about, did you guys follow all the Pizzagate stuff?
I followed some of it. I wouldn't say I followed all of it, but I definitely paid attention.
Well, the broad strokes were the I call it a rumor, call it reports. It was mostly on, I think, 4chan or Reddit or some dark recess. It originated in some dark recess of the internet and got onto Twitter. The claim was that there was a child trafficking ring catering to Washington elites, and this place called Comet Pizza was one of the hubs. So this came out, and this was going around. And then a few people on Twitter they were anonymous accounts with maybe like single-digit followers. They started adding all these details about how there was satanic ritual abuse happening in the basement, and where there was a sex dungeon and a satanic altar, and that's where they kept all the kids chained up before the traffickers came to whisk them away to their buyers, and you know the stuff about the adrenochrome and lizard people and all kinds of fantastical elements were being added to it. Then somebody went and shot the place up. Police,
and the one magic bullet went through the computer.
Well, upon arriving to clean up to investigate, and as it turned out, there was no basement, and so all the news headlines were Pizzagate debunked.
If there's no garage or no cellar, then clearly none of this could have happened.
Yeah, basically it. But it basically got dressed up with all these fantastical elements. Meanwhile, the underlying premise, with everything we know about Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, trafficking underage girls to no one in particular, but we know they were doing it. Also with if you guys, did you hear about did you guys ever look at the Podesta emails that were posted on WikiLeaks? John Podesta, if you're not familiar.
Bro, I can't log into WikiLeaks. I have an active top secret clearance.
Okay. Well, you can read.
So you're not allowed to log into WikiLeaks? Why?
No.
Why?
There's classified information on there.
How do you know?
Well, you should be the first.
Reported.
You should be the first to be logged
supposedly.
It's forbidden.
Really? Is that like passed by your SSOs and stuff like that?
Well,
I mean, did I do it? I mean,
I didn't ask you that.
Not at all.
Just between the three of us.
So,
just between us. No, don't tell anybody else.
No one's gonna know. No, absolutely not.
For the kids at home who aren't familiar, John Podesta was a major Clinton aide, like way up, like right up to her presidential campaign. A bunch of his emails with his brother and a bunch of other Clinton confidants. Those were posted, and there's all kinds of coded language in there. Well, first of all, they're associated with this artist. I forget her name, but she's an avowed Satanist and has this activity called spirit cooking, which involves, I don't know what, but it includes, among other elements, cutting yourself and the pain being some kind of having some kind of consciousness altering effect. There are pictures of John Podesta holding up his hand, and he's got Band-Aids from where he cut himself. So Podesta and his brother are into the spirit cooking thing. There's email exchanges between them about, are you coming over for the spirit cooking tonight? And there's all kinds of language about cheese pizza. You left a handkerchief at my house with a pizza related map on it. Like, these people are obsessed with cheese pizza, apparently. Or this is coded language for child pornography. That was the Pizzagate conspiracy, that cheese pizza, CP, child pornography, and there's a logo that of a triangle with a little swirly design.
I remember that,
of it.
and it was on the artwork on the walls or something like that in the facility.
It was the logo for Comet Pizza, but it's also supposedly like a secret sign to let pedophiles know this is the place to go.
It's like all that, the underground, the hobo underground, like, symbology that says, like, this type of stuff is allowed in this place, that kind of thing.
Right. But yeah, it's
speakeasy signs.
Mm-hmm.
But there's definitely, I mean, nobody is that obsessed with cheese pizza. It's definitely coded language for something. Given everything we know about Jeffrey Epstein, the stuff about Pizzagate, if you strip away the more fantastical elements, the basic premise, I don't know why that sounds so crazy, but it's the same people who denounce Pizzagate as being nutty and only for QAnon conspiracists because there's no basement, and that disproves it. They're the same kind of people who are denouncing the Sound of Freedom. Kind of makes you think.
Yeah, and again, I go back to, I don't understand how you denounce something that you know is accurate. Like, that's what's so weird about it.
It is crazy because they talk about, especially the jungle rescue and how it didn't happen. Now the director, the producer, the guy himself all said that it didn't happen, that it's fictionalized, and they took some artistic liberty to make this film. Now it's a composite of other operations.
Right.
The island op actually happened.
But the island op happened. So it's amazing to me that none of these articles speak about the island op.
Right.
Because the island op is so documented so well. In fact, Rolling Stone, the magazine that covered, what's it? It's a superhero action film for fathers with brainworms. That was the headline. Them and The Guardian back in 2014 praised Tim Ballard and his heroic rescue effort to rescue these 52 children. 52 sex trafficked.
That's insane. Children. That's an insane number to pull in one day.
And in fact, if you listen to Ballard and some of the other people that were on these operations, the movie actually had less stuff because the things that were real were too unbelievable.
Mm.
Yeah, and they had to streamline it. They couldn't.
Yeah.
They couldn't possibly show every operation, or even it was an abbreviated version of his career. But
well, it was only the beginning of his post-government career. So it's only the first thing that he did
after he resigned. Yeah.
After he resigned from the Homeland Security. And it's funny because people just attack him. There's no record of him even being in the CIA, and in Homeland Security, those are few and far between too. And then you'll see guys on TikTok like, the movie was dookie, it was dog shit. And if you even take a second to look up Tim Ballard, you'll see that there's suspicion around him too. Why? Because someone from the Rolling Stones said they can't find information on him. Because there's no government people denouncing him or denouncing that those operations happened. It's all journalists.
Yeah, because Homeland Security posts bios and resumes of all of their
Right.
agents online.
Especially if they're
Yeah.
undercover agents.
Defined.
The guys-
Especially the undercover agents. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think these people even deserve to be dignified by arguing with them. They're just evil. They just That's
I
it.
completely agree.
they're
I'm not arguing with them. I'm telling them they're a piece of shit. They're a piece of human garbage.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
pedophiles are not human beings. They don't deserve human rights.
And a real quick shout out to the actors who played the pedophiles in this movie.
Oh, that's
I mean, how creepy were those dudes? And by all accounts, from everybody, they're really great dudes. So, like, what kind of dark place did they have to get into their own psyche? Hopefully, they weren't method actors, right? That's why Joaquin Phoenix could never play the pedophile role. Him and Daniel Day-Lewis would run around acting like they were John Money and fucking Alfred Kinsey. So,
well, that was
I saw something.
that was a sharp left turn, but
a little bit.
But yeah, pedophiles are not human. I think you abdicate if you make the calculation that inflicting that on a child is worth your fleeting sexual gratification. You have abdicated your humanity. I don't think you deserve human rights. If you provide moral cover for these people, like these sycophantic prostitutes disguising themselves as journalists, I don't think they're much different. I think we're now. Should we suspend their human rights? No, but
I mean, the problem. It's such a weird. So I talk about this with anybody that I have philosophical, theological, conversations with. I'm a pretty open-minded guy about most things. I mean, the podcast here is testament to that, right? There's two things in the world that I am wildly binary about: child safety and Second Amendment rights for Americans. Like, those are the only two things that I refuse to have a quote unquote middle ground conversation on, right? Like, because to me, they're either black or white, off or on. Right? They exist or they don't exist. And that's why, Brian and I had a 3-hour conversation about my belief that the average American should be allowed to own tactical nuclear weaponry, right? Because you don't get to draw a line. Like, that's how absolute I am about it. As ridiculous or much of a caricature as that sounds like from a conversation point, you can't draw a line. And similarly, I feel the same way about child safety and child endangerment, right? There is no gray area. There is no moral relativism. There is no yeah, but. It's just, yeah, children should be protected, period. I'll stop.
I do appreciate you prefacing that by noting my 3 hours of disagreement on that particular point.
And I understand that your disagreement comes from a place of logic, right? And it comes from a place of realism and whatnot. And the point that I was trying to make in having that conversation with you is, it's one of those things that you can only be all or nothing. That's my belief, right? And I'm not suggesting, by the way, that if you're not pro 100% Second Amendment, that means you like pedophiles. I'm not trying to draw some kind of false corollary, because these are actually very serious topics, right? There's times for jokes and not, and child safety is never a time for a joke. But I really don't see gray area here at all. The only question is the line of demarcation of adult versus child, right? And is it 18? Is it 16? Is it 21? Is it 25? Like, that's the only conversation to have.
Yeah, that's a gray area, and it's person specific. But I mean, the victims we're talking about are clearly
100%.
undeniably children.
Yeah, it's beyond contestation, right? To quote our guy from A Knight's Tale.
That's a good scene.
Well, I think
I love it.
One of the big criticisms of the film by a bunch of outlets who haven't seen the movie. So what they did, they went and they interviewed agents or people that are involved in human trafficking experts, right? So these are guys that that deal in this world. So they're basically the expert testimony to refute Tim Ballard. Now, their problem with the movie is that child kidnapping to be sold into sex slavery is a smaller piece of the pie of other issues that come into human trafficking, which
Like what?
is true. Like, for example, most people that are sold into human trafficking aren't kidnapped, right? They're groomed, or they come from a war-torn
They're
area.
runaways, or they're
runaways.
Okay, yeah,
They're people from
okay.
foster
Refugees,
homes.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, human trafficking is even the prostitution you see out in your local
Sure.
city, right?
Sure.
Those are people
But
that
I don't
run
see
away.
it, but that a person would see.
Sure. You, as in you out there.
Nobody's accusing you of anything, Matt.
Right. Yeah. I mean, people that you would solicit to. I mean, so yes, that's true. But that's also like saying, like, the number one cause of fatal car accidents is drunk driving. So if somebody writes an article about distracted driving and texting, then listen, you're not even getting to the point of what causes more death.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not, because Tim Ballard wasn't involved in, people that were runaways that were 17,
right,
or adult slaves.
Right.
He was involved in pedophilic stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's what he documented, and
Right.
what he decided to make a movie
Right.
about.
Well, and in fairness, we don't
me,
know. They never said in the movie that all 52 of those kids, as an example, were all abducted. They never said that. They were just simply in that same system of human trafficking.
There were actually a lot of adults that were rescued in that operation in real life. It's just
Is that right?
They focused, yeah. It's just that for storytelling purposes, they streamlined it.
It makes it look better when they're all, like, 10, 12 years old,
right.
kind of thing.
Sure.
Well, I don't even think it's so much that. It's just that it's more thematically consistent.
It's whatever. It's Hollywood.
I mean,
at the end of the day.
I don't
Even a well done, well intended movie is going to Hollywoodize the movie, right, to make it flow. To your point. So
But the thing is, like, in that operation, he rescued more than 52 people. He rescued 52 kids, and also a bunch of adults. I think there were like 117 people in total.
By the way, guys, we're well beyond spoilers at this point.
Yeah.
So we just stepped right through that because this is
yeah.
that was a pretty dramatic moment where you don't know if they're going to pull it off or not, right? If you didn't read ahead,
right.
And I didn't. I walked in, so I did myself the benefit. I did no pre-reading, so I walked in unaware of anything. I just knew it was a movie about a dude. I didn't even watch a trailer.
Oh wow.
So I didn't know the actor was the same dude from The Passion of the Christ, right? Like, I didn't know that. I didn't know any of this. I didn't know any of this background, of his background or his operational background. I know nothing. I literally walked in the movie going, I'm here to watch a movie about some stuff, and it was really good.
I actively avoided interviews with them until I saw the movie.
Yeah. So
I've been following that dude for a long time. So, like, I retired in 2018. And
God, was it 2018 when you retired?
Yeah, man.
Dang, that seems like just yesterday.
That was 5 years ago?
Yes, man. The summer of 2018, I dropped my resume on his website.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I was ready to join the fight and go rescue kids from Haiti or wherever it is else that was happening.
You never got a call back?
Never really got a call back.
That sucks.
And I didn't follow up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does suck. But I mean, even with our background, and particularly mine, I used to work combat search and rescue.
Mm-hmm.
So I never was involved in an operation. Well, I didn't lead any operations that had children involved.
Mm-hmm.
There was one time in Iraq that I went to a place that we weren't looking for children, but children ended up being there.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the times it was either, a U.S. person that was missing, and we also rescued an Australian individual in the Philippines that were captured by terrorists. So I understand, like, the personal attachment that you do and the personal man hours to find somebody, and that's for adults with people who knew what they were getting into.
Eyes wide open, and it still went bad. Yeah.
So I can't imagine watching hours and hours of child porn, studying a pedophile's personal book, manuscripts on how pedophiles connect with each other, and that's how he actually apprehended a dude and got him to give up information by telling him like, hey,
I'm with you. I get it. I'm here to do a job, but I get what you're doing, and I'm with you.
He's like, oh, you've read my book? I've studied your book.
Yeah.
Right? Which is a true story. He really did that. He has the book with that guy's autograph when they.
Please tell me. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What?
I didn't mean to interrupt
No, go ahead.
Please tell me that in real life there was far more violence done to that guy. Because like every time he was in a cell with a pedophile, I'm like inside I'm screaming like just break him, break every bone in his body.
So, if your goal is to save children,
I know
you can't do that, right? You got to be better. You got to be bigger.
But you could come back afterwards, after the kids are sick.
Well, they did show the guy that got caught at the border and what happened to him while he was in prison, right? You saw the quick photo
when he's like, "You want to be like your buddy?" Yeah.
Yeah, but but he looked like he died really quickly though.
I'm not sure he was dead in that photo.
Right. I mean, he died at that point. You don't know how much of his blood was spread all around other parts of the prison before he fell there and died.
Fair enough, guys.
Yeah, But yeah, it's. Oh man,
I think they should be lowered by their thumbs into a wood chipper.
So
with adrenaline shots on the ready, so they don't lose consciousness.
What's crazy to me is that Pedophile 101, in all of their like pamphlets and manuscripts, they talk about how they need to lower the age of consent.
Mm-hmm.
For youth for sexual purposes,
like the UN's doing and like California just did,
and like Bernie Sanders argued for,
and to make it normalized, right? So it really does tie in politically with even the age of consent for, say, hormone blockers or surgeries, top and bottom, for boys and girls.
Yep.
Like even if you want to play the middle of the road and say that the right kid at the right time really is in a different body, but there should be kind of a hard line with surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm even which I don't believe that, but even if you did, you're just feeding, like, you've lost the battle. Once you start saying that the age of consent to do all these things for children is a child, then who are you to tell a pedophile that he can't do these things?
I agree with that. I think that is 100% part of the slope, right? It's if a kid can tell you, Mom, Dad, I know how I was born, but I identify outwardly and sexually as a different gender, and I want to have my body transformed to be that. Like, how do you say, yeah, okay, we're going to make that okay, but then we're not going to let you just simply make decisions about your own, agency, self-agency, right? Because that's really what we're talking about. In both directions, it's agency, and are we going to grant that to children or not? And if we decide that we are, then there is no limit about that agency, right? And they should be allowed to vote. They should be allowed to join the military. They should be allowed to enter into binding agreements with banking institutions. They should be allowed to buy alcohol and smoke cigarettes.
Work construction in 100-degree weather.
Sign up for the draft and all of the other things, right? And those are ludicrous. It is insanity to sit here and act as if, a 14-year-old should be able to buy alcohol and enlist in the Marine Corps and go off and do those things. But we're going to say that a 14-year-old can decide that they want to, have gender affirming surgery, as they call it, or that a 10-year-old needs to have puberty blockers. It's
or that a 14-year-old can date a 24-year-old man.
Right. I saw a meme on a friend's
which is a California law, by the way.
But at the same time, though.
Oh, I lost it.
If two 14-year-olds, like if you watch any teen drama on TV today, you've got You've got characters who, I mean, they're played by people in their 30s, but the characters are supposed to be teenagers. They're supposed to be
Right.
like 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. They're having sex all the time. It's just treated as normal. It's weird if they're not having sex.
Brian, it's not just in the movies. It was everybody but you. But yeah,
Well, but we have a culture that encourages that.
I don't disagree.
So 2 14-year-olds have sex. We don't. That's just normal and expected, and you're treated as weird if you disapprove of that. So the girl gets pregnant. There's they're kids. They can't take care of them. But a 14-year-old and a 24-year-old, well, 24 is pretty young still, but I mean, it's just, we have such a weird, inconsistent culture related to sex.
Well, I
It's
think part of the
impractical.
problem is here's why it's impractical, Brian. I can actually, to me, this part's easy to explain. If a 14-year-old isn't old enough to consent to have sex, then the other 14-year-old isn't old enough to convict of rape. Like, that's the problem.
Yeah,
is you have two children doing something they shouldn't be doing, but you can't criminalize it because they're children, and you can't criminalize what kids do, right? So that's the trick.
I agree with that.
And
we have a culture. We have a broader culture that actively encourages them to engage in that behavior.
I don't know how to. I don't know how to respond to that. I mean, is that a declarative statement or a question?
No, it's a declarative statement. We have a culture that tells them, well, you're weird if you're not having sex. We tell kids that at that age, you're old enough to make this decision to have sex, as long as it's within a certain age range. But that kid doesn't have the agency to say yes to somebody older than 18 who, if he impregnates her, can take care of her and the child. Now, I don't think that should be encouraged either, but I think if somebody who is a legal adult impregnates a teenager, he is enslaved to her. He has to marry her if she'll have him.
But she doesn't. She doesn't get to decide. Again, she's a kid. No, this is the problem. This is the circular logic that's problematic at every turn.
About being consistent.
I know, but the girl, you said if she'll have him, she doesn't get to decide. Or do her parents get to decide? Sure. Like that's the trick. So now we're doing indentured. Now we're doing structured marriages.
This is already predicated. Hold on, let me finish my point here. This is predicated on what we've already established by our culture. She's old enough to consent to sex with somebody her age.
No, she's not. Nobody agrees with that. Legally, we don't agree with that.
Legally, but watch any teen drama.
Okay,
just pick one at random.
But you're picking the media, and then you're trying to correlate that back to the law. I'm being strict on the law. The law says no.
But law
it's just not. It's decriminalized for minors.
From culture.
I don't agree with that.
It's decriminalized, but culturally, it's encouraged.
So what? So is cigarette smoke. So is cigarettes and alcohol and drug use and racing and drifting and yeah, sure it is. In movies now, I mean, not so much today, but it always has been.
Well, it's frowned upon now. It's stigmatized. I mean, you can't
in society, not in the movies. It's not stigmatized in the movies. Bad guy,
But marijuana's not stigmatized, and neither is vaping.
Yeah.
So we've just transferred to something else. Yeah. Same thing. Same, right?
Well, I didn't have a well thought out endpoint to that discussion, but it's our laws are inconsistent, and our culture sends messages that are in conflict with our laws.
Agreed with all that.
But laws always eventually reflect the culture, we can't even
correct the laws, because in California they want to make harsher penalties, make it a serious felony to get caught trafficking minors, and the assembly said no. They blocked it. They didn't want that to happen. Their reasoning for it was prison doesn't solve the issue. That's number one. And another one, what was the other reason? Oh man, I just lost it. But I forgot. But
Was it a sincere reason, or was it a
yeah, it was a sincere reason.
pretext?
Like it was. I mean, so like prison problems and they're putting him in jail doesn't solve the underlying issue of what causes, um, sexual exploitation of minors. That there's a bigger, broader issue, and
That's
that
like
doesn't solve
that.
it. Oh,
That's
and we already here's what it was. There's already laws on the books to prevent those types of things or to punish those type of things.
right. But the point here was to bump up the punishment. That was it. It was simply to make it a higher level punishment.
You're
To
right.
say we want to put this on the same level as arson and rape and murder.
Brought to you by the same people who think that guns kill people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or brought to you by the same people that think that a hate crime is worse than a normal crime.
Right.
Which like I think about that and it's so insane to me. Like the line from a movie that says, imagine you're a deer. You spot a little buck and you put your deer lips on a cool, clear water. And then
bam!
A fucking bullet rips off the side of your head. Now I ask you, do you give a shit what color pants the son of a bitch who shot you was wearing? Right? So I don't actually care if he shot me because I'm black, or if he shot me because he liked my Jordans, or if he shot me for the watch or the $10 in my pocket. My son is still dead.
Right.
Like it's the same punishment. I don't need to bump up the punishment because he did it out of hate. So what's worse, hate or indifference?
I gotta ask Brian. Do you know the reference, the quote? Do you know where that came from?
I vaguely recall it.
It's My Cousin Vinny.
Okay. Yeah.
He's like, you think these pants look good? You're going deer hunting.
Yeah, he was going hunting and he had on these ridiculous pants that they're like suit pants.
Yeah.
They actually look like 80s golf pants is what he was wearing.
Yeah.
But there's an even more insidious aspect to that the presumption is that they can police your private internal attitudes.
Right. Right.
Like they have authority over what you think and feel, and which is absurd. I mean, it doesn't violate the letter of the First Amendment, but it certainly violates the spirit of it. That we all have freedom of conscience. I mean, if you don't have freedom within the space the space within your own head, then you have no freedom. But they claim authority over thought itself. In like so many leftist causes, like critical race theory, any of them. I mean, modern feminism, the LGBT movement, all of it sets itself to re-engineering everybody's private internal attitudes, and trying to control thoughts. I think that should just the arrogance of that, to think that you have any rightful authority over that, but also the audacity of thinking you can control that you can re-engineer society to remake people according to your ideology. That's
and then name it democracy.
Yeah. Of course, it's dressed up in all of this benevolent sounding language about tolerance and acceptance and inclusion, but it's really they're claiming ownership of your private internal attitudes and telling you what you're allowed to think and feel. And all of their labels for their opposition, it's never a defined accusation like this is the thing you did that was racist. They never define it. It's always an accusation about what you are inside. You're a homophobe. You're an Islamophobe. You've got this. It doesn't mean anything in terms of anything they can define about your behavior. They're attacking your internal disposition, and it's what they imagine is your internal disposition. It's never anything they can define. It's never anything that you said or did this thing that indicates this attitude. It's always, if you don't think if you don't agree with the Quran, it's because you're racist toward Arabs. It's never argued on its merits, and which speaks to still a deeper problem with the left, and it's, to be fair, they don't have a monopoly on it. The right has it too. They don't really have an ideology. They don't have a system of coherent, thought out ideas that connect logically to an underlying premise where they have a complete worldview. They have a constellation of conditioned attitudes. Like, they don't even know why they think these things. The groups that they're in, they've learned that you can accrue social currency by agreeing with certain things and disagreeing with others. You get status and influence by affirming these things, and you get frowned upon if you don't. And so they do that, and then they're reinforced as being virtuous for adopting those attitudes, but they don't know why they think that. They don't know why. And that's why it's so incoherent. But there are, you can, and that's why you can pretty much guess how they're going to vote based on their haircut or what bumper stickers they have on their car, because it's all part of a package.
My son and I were going down the road, and there was a vehicle in front of us. Well, it was just a nondescript sedan, and it had all the bumper stickers on it, right?
Yeah.
And my son
I don't
goes,
understand that.
My son goes, that's a white chick driving that. And it was
like that.
We were in Eureka, California, kind of Northern California up the coast. We go to a spot to have dinner. And so it's me, Delani, Cooper, my son, and his girlfriend. And they had a big Black Lives Matter sign in the window.
Oof.
And Cooper walks up, he's like, "You see, Dad? My life matters." Do you understand? So you have to stop treating me so all in public.
Well, he should have done it to Delani, though, with her being the only white person in the group.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I think that he didn't want to go that far.
Right. He was afraid that then people might start yelling, then you got to beat somebody's ass for speaking to your wife.
Well,
and
it's funny when he's yelling at a big black guy.
In this environment, Delani's not exactly comfortable either and could take that kind of personal.
Sure.
She's already on the outside looking into our family.
Sure. Well, because now she's like literally the only white person in your whole family. Because all of your kids have dark people of color, significant others.
Rainbow coalition. I got a Mexican, daddy for my one grandbaby, a Samoan for the other grandbaby. My son is dating a Marshallese Japanese.
And the thing is, they all look the same.
Yes.
Like your entire family is homogenous color-wise, except for Delani.
Yeah. Right. And her family too. So it's funny because
and Aubrey even looks like Moana a little bit. Like she has some she looks more like Pacific Islander than the others do. It's funny.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. But so yeah, Cooper's like, "Look, Dad, it doesn't matter what you say anymore. Okay, my life matters." Are you kidding me right now? We should go in there and get a window seat. Whoever's sitting there should just get up and move.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay.
I love hearing that from Coop because I've been around him enough to know that he doesn't buy into any of that stuff. So it's like 100% like a joke to him to do that.
My sociology major, bachelor's degree,
that hated all the classes he sat through, and he only did them because it got him through because he got to run track while he was doing it, kind of deal.
It's funny. He's like, "Can't believe these people are weak, Dad. They're weak. Stop crying. Go work out or something."
So I wanted to circle back around. So actually, I wanted to tell this story, this thought real quick. So we were talking about the movie and scenes that were really powerful to us and whatnot. So the scene that was the most powerful to me was when the agent Ballard, right, Timoteo,
Oh,
when Tim was calling home to talk to his wife, or before he left, he was talking to her, and then when he called home and was basically telling her like, I don't know what to do. They're recalling me and I can't come home. And she was like, stay there, save those kids, find her brother or find his sister, right? Like that was like wildly powerful to me because it's easy for the dude who's out there in the field to be like, I'm going to stay out in the field and do my thing because I'm a badass and this is what I do. But for his wife to be so sold out on it and to have his back.
Have you heard Tim Ballard tell the real story there?
No, I told you I've seen none of the interviews.
Right. So
that's gonna
the real story is more fantastical than the movie.
Really?
Yeah, and it's funny because when he tells the story, it's a huge indicator that they're LDS. Like it's like out in front, I'm like, oh, that guy's LDS, obviously. And because and the reason why and Brian, correct any part of this that I miss, he didn't want to tell the real story because it kind of makes him look like a coward.
Oh, he wanted to come home and his wife told him he couldn't?
Well, not so much that he wanted to come home, it's just he thought about his own 6 children.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like and she's like, what about those children?
Mm-hmm.
Our 6 children will be fine. Because he's like, I'm not gonna have a job, babe. Like we're not like what are we gonna do? And she basically just said, I think a big powerful line to him was, I'm not gonna have you jeopardize my salvation.
Damn.
Yeah. So he's like, well, then I guess I gotta do it.
Wow.
How does that mark them out as LDS?
Because they get married in a temple and they're joined for all time and eternity. So whatever he does as the leader of their family jeopardizes her salvation.
Gotcha.
So basically she was saying God's going to judge you harshly for turning your back on these kids, and that means he's turning his back on me also. And
I agree with her sentiment, but as you might imagine, I have opinions about the theology.
Of course. Of course.
Just just throwing that out there.
Yeah, but just the way the movie was presented, I just it was super cool to me, right? Like that sequence was the most powerful of all the sequences, and it was personal for me, not because of that or not because of the kid situation. It was just, I don't ever give her the credit directly because I suck at words of affirmation, as I'm often told that I don't suit my wife's love language properly, but like. I've watched other movies, and one of the things that's made my relationship work with my wife is that she supports me in a level that I could never support her emotionally and
Sure.
You know what I mean? And like I was watching stupid movie, Baby Driver. I don't know if you guys have seen that one. So I was watching it on an international flight. It's a movie. It's whatever, right? But I was thinking about that sequence at the end, right, where they're just like deciding to be criminals, essentially, right? Like the couple. And I was sitting there thinking about it. I'm like, I could walk into my house and tell Carrie, hey, pack a bag. I need 3 days worth of stuff. We got to be out of the house in 20 minutes. And she'd be like, what are we doing? And I'd be like, I'm going to go rob a bank and we're going on the run. And she'd be in there packing a bag. I believe that in my heart of hearts. Like that's the way she operates. And it was like kind of crazy because I 100% would never reciprocate that kind of like.
Right.
Have you guys seen that? Have you guys seen The Town?
No.
Yeah.
With Ben Affleck and.
I know what it is. I just haven't seen it.
There's that scene where he comes in. He's like, "Can't tell you what we're doing. Can't explain it. It's going to be dangerous and illegal. Need you to come with me." And he's like, all right, who's driving?
Yeah.
Right.
Now, would you guys do that?
No.
If I came into the room and said that?
I wouldn't do it for anybody. I wouldn't do it for one of my brothers. I wouldn't do it for anybody. Like, I need a lot of information.
You're a pansy.
Perhaps.
I need at minimum, I need a 5-paragraph order. I need to understand a lot of things that are going on. Like what's our higher, what's our lower, what are my lateral controls? Like I need to know things,
I need ingress, egress.
right?
I need a plan.
I'm not saying I
I
won't be.
need latitude to advise the plan.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying I'm not down at the end
Revise
of
the
the
plan.
day. I might be there when we cross the line of departure, but
But
I
if
ain't
I
doing it
said,
on blind
Matt,
faith.
if I said, Matt, I need you to trust me,
Nope.
that wouldn't be blind faith. That would be
That's literally blind faith. I need you to trust
that,
me.
But yeah,
No.
that would be that. No, it's on the basis of 30 years of knowing me.
No. I've already asked and answered. No.
That sucks, man.
yeah. I think your point though, that this guy who's portrayed as a hero, he is nothing without his
Without
family.
that support model. Yeah.
And one of the things that
Well, he
he
wouldn't have
struggled
done
with
it without his
personally-
family. Like, he wouldn't have
Right.
had the emotional drive to do it if he didn't have his family.
So that's the thing that he talked about, because somebody on a radio show or a podcast called in and said, "Hey, after seeing all that stuff, how did you set yourself back to zero?" And he said, "Honestly, the answer, I haven't."
I was going to say, how do you ever get back to normal again?
He's like, "I haven't." So
You're damaged goods.
one of the things that he used to do, he would see a therapist because every time he saw a child, he projected his own, whatever child is closest to that age, he project their face onto it.
Of
right?
course.
And he kept trying to let that go. And then the one time, well, this is the jungle rescue.
Uh-huh.
he's like, I put my child's face on that face, and I was all in.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't a jungle rescue. It was
Island.
it was a Haitian rescue.
Okay.
And it turned out that the two children that he rescued on that didn't have parents. So he adopted both of them.
Oh, no shit.
Dang.
So he literally made them his
kids.
children.
Yeah.
He's like, they're all my kids.
Yeah.
And that's how I do this. Every child that gets saved
Yeah.
is my kid.
Yeah.
And this time, literally, now they are my kids.
Yeah. The first
So he's got two-
that first sequence with his wife in the movie, when he comes home from interrogating the guy, and he walks in, and she knows when she sees his face, and she's just like, "Hey, kids," and they're like, "Daddy's
Right.
home," and then she's like, "Hey, get off, Dad. Let him." She's like trying to like walk that line
she
between
knows.
letting the kids be around him but not overwhelm them. They sit down to eat, and then she's like, "Why don't y'all go do homework and stuff?" And then she just holds his hand. Like, that was the first indication that she gets it, right? And I was like, "Oh man, that was a powerful moment." But then that was just foreshadowing to her being the one to tell him he had to keep going, kind of thing. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy what actually causes these things, and what these articles complain about what the underlying conditions are and what's really causing it, but then they're all for the war in Ukraine.
Yeah, they are
So-
the underlying problem.
So there's currently a bunch of kids that are war torn with no parents and no job and no way to get food, and the way that they do that is to serve somebody else. So this war in Ukraine has like pedophiles salivating, or human traffickers salivating.
Yep.
There's like fresh meat everywhere,
And they're all blonde and white, fair complected, and
at any time America could step in and make this stop.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Yeah. Yeah,
Now,
those stats at the end, were crazy, because I've seen those stats, right? But the guys that I went with, my buddy, he had never seen them before. So we're standing outside after the movie, and he was like, "Those numbers." And I'm like, "Yeah, I've seen those." And he goes, "You think those are real?" And I'm like, "Oh, those are real." And
they're probably low.
Right, and because it's only what you can
That's what we know
report.
about.
Right, exactly. And he was like, he was blown away by that, right? He's like, "There's more slavery now than before." And I'm like, "Crazy, right?" But yet, all we can focus on is what happened back in the 1700s. Like, how about focus on what's happening today, like
Yeah,
in
it's
real
not
time?
sincere. That's not a sincere position.
Right.
It's losers making excuses for why they're losers. But they don't care about the things they claim to care about. If they did
you see
they'd be celebrating
discussion that me and MJ had last night about the DOJ's change of website?
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm not sure there's a coincidence that
that just
border
happened
stuff is missing.
Yeah.
Especially when there's 85,000 children that are unaccounted for.
Right. When that was a big
You
thing
know-
that we were talking about was these kids being separated from their parents and the coyotes bringing kids
Right.
over and all of that. Oh no, that's not happening. And then there was some big stat that, what happened to all the kids that got lost? And they were like, well, that's impossible to track. How are we going to track all these kids?
Well, at least
Because I just saw that
before-
Senate Cruz was interrogating somebody in a congressional hearing. It was like the head of Homeland Security or something. They were like, what happened to the 80,000 kids that have come over the border and you have no records of them now? These kids are just
There's-
Why do you guys
gone.
think our
You know, the kids
government
have-
is letting this happen?
Well, yeah, they have a name and a number pinned to their shirt as they come across the border, little kids. And before, we used to make whoever the contact was come down to the border and pick them up. Now we're just putting them on buses and sending them away
Mm-hmm.
to
Well,
wherever.
Why
right?
do you,
Here's an
why do you
address,
think our government is
send them
doing
there.
that though? Why do you think that is?
Just no telling why.
Yeah, I mean, at best,
No theories? Matt,
they're,
sorry.
they're praying and spraying, right? And at worst, there's powerful people that are involved in
Yeah.
human trafficking.
Yeah, it's somewhere on the continuum. It's
I
either
don't know
it's either
what's in between.
it's either buffoonery and being shit at your job, apathetic and not caring, or being involved. It's somewhere in that continuum. I mean, that's the only real answer. And the only question is everybody in the same spot on the continuum, or do different people fall into different places on that continuum?
Well, I also believe that people of a certain ideology are willing to sacrifice all of it for that ideology. There was a story in New York about an advocacy group, a couple of women who helped get people out of prison. Well, one of the people that they helped get out of prison brutally attacked one of the women, like a day after he
Really?
got out of prison. And then they asked the ladies, like, "Hey, do you still do this work?" And they said, "Absolutely, yes. Like, nothing's changed. We're all like, this is the thing. Like, you don't understand that this is a consequence of even your work. It's like our work's too important." So their ideology has them so focused in on this thing called prison and equity that they don't see the consequences of what it is that they're doing. So I think the border is the same thing. Like, hey, there's people, they deserve a better life. They should come over. I'm so empathetic for these people that are coming, and it doesn't matter who actually gets hurt along the way.
I'm actually like in the broad sense, I'm actually pretty liberal when it comes to immigration. I think
Sure.
we should have a liberal immigration policy. I think we should let in as many people as we can, but it's what we can that's the operative. We need to secure the border. We absolutely need to secure the border, and we need to control it, or we're not a country. And I think that's a big part of the motivation for why this is happening. This would be a whole other podcast, but if you just keywords, if anybody's interested, I covered this a lot back when I was a general audience journalist. The Council on Foreign Relations. It's an unelected quasi-governmental organization. They've had a long-standing agenda to merge the United States, Canada, and Mexico into a single political entity. And I know this sounds like wacky conspiracy stuff. It is, in fact, a conspiracy, but it's not a theory. It's well documented. But a lot of that happens by erasing borders and population exchanges. They're not committed to the principles of the United States Constitution. They have a different worldview that is hostile to that. But which I fundamentally oppose. But that poem, New Colossus, at the Statue of Liberty.
The what?
That poem, the New Colossus, that's engraved on the Statue of Liberty.
I didn't know who that was.
I get verklempt every time I read that. about bring us you're tired, you're poor, you're huddled masses yearning for freedom. I believe in that. I believe that's what America is and should always strive to be, but it has to be on our terms. It has to be under law and order. But I think we need to either leave the world to itself and give them the credit of having the agency to solve their own problems in their own way and not count them as our problems. Or if we're going to get involved, we need to get involved. We need to send people to South American countries to bring law and order. We need to become an empire. The answer cannot be to transplant all of the world's poverty, and it can't be to transplant the entire third world population to the United States, because that just turns us into the places they're leading.
Right.
But we don't have unlimited space and resources. We don't have an unlimited ability to assimilate foreign cultures into our own country and still remain our country.
That last part I think is the real issue. So my perspective, my point of view is that it's immigration implies integration, and part of what is seen as problematic by those that get tagged as being anti-immigration, and I'm not anti-immigration, is when large groups of people are immigrated but then refuse to integrate. And they want to live in a little X, whatever their former country is, version of where they came from, rather than become American. They simply want to live in a place that has a stronger social network, a better, medical system, welfare system, et cetera, but they want to continue to conduct themselves as they did in their previous country. And I think that's part of the problem. Dre, I saw a really neat interview with Mike Piazza. I don't know if you've seen it. It was pretty recent. I think I might have sent it to you. If not, I meant to. But he's at some event, and he's smoking a cigar, and he's hanging out. He's in a polo shirt, and he's just sitting there talking. And he's talking about why Italian Americans are the best, and we're the best immigrants. And he talks about the fact that they're proud Italians, but they're proud Americans. And he's talking about how, when the Italians immigrated, they lived in a little area, and it was the slum, and it was in the Bronx or wherever it was, right? But they were always Americans. He's like, you never questioned if they were Americans. They just simply were proud to be Italian also. And they worked hard, and they did everything to become the best Americans that happened to be Italian. And it was just,
that I think that checks out. I think one of the problems is that we're not setting a good example. Americans don't know what it's like to be an American now.
I agree.
If you do the man on the street interview and say, hey, what does it mean to be an American? Most people will probably stare at you, and the people that do answer, everyone's going to give you a different answer.
Mm-hmm.
America barely exists anymore.
Yeah.
I think this whole thing of diversity as our strength is a big mistake. Like, diversity in and of itself is not a strength.
It's Orwellian newspeak is what it is.
So, but what makes us special, or what used to, was that we had one common goal: to be united through our diversity.
Mm-hmm.
It's what made the Marine Corps great, right? You have all these people that came from different backgrounds and different races and ethnicities and even languages, but they all bought into the equal and anchor.
Mm-hmm.
And they all had one fight.
Everybody was they were more interested in being a Marine than they were in being black or white or Southern or northern or whatever.
But all of those things that they brought to the table brought their skills, their individual skills.
Yeah.
To the fight.
How many times you see those memes that talks about, the best, you're living in the barracks and your Mexican friends teaching you how to make salsa while the Indian guys doing this and the Southern guys doing that. It's like just another night in the barracks, right? It's like that was what made us us. I mean, the three of us, likely wouldn't have become friends just, without the Marine Corps around it to cause us to have to get along and to do things, right?
Yeah.
Totally agree, and I think we've lost that. Um, I, I'm not sure how to get it back. I have some ideas, but
I
yeah,
have
that's
I have a
Vivek
blog article about
2024.
it.
Oh wait, sorry.
yeah,
There's no political solution, man. I agree, Vivek 2024, absolutely. I saw his interview with Glenn
Tucker
Beck.
or the Glenn Beck, yeah.
And I mean, I was rooting for him before, but now, like, I want to,
It's impossible not to fall in love with the
I
guy
want,
when you hear him talk,
I want to pledge my sword to him.
right?
But my fear is that um, if he gets anywhere close to the White House, he's going to get assassinated.
Trump didn't.
Trump's a clown, dude.
But if somebody warranted assassination, it was that guy.
Well, but he
actually,
didn't. He didn't
I think it
threaten
was
the
better
status quo.
for the other side to have Trump around.
It was
Yeah,
a, it
they
was
love
a
that.
it was a
So
consolidating.
that.
Yeah, that's fair.
it's better
Vivek
than to have a guy
Ramaswamy.
that might actually unite us.
Vivek Ramaswamy actually, like, he's got a plan and he's articulated it, and he's openly told the deep state, "I'm going
You're
to
on
destroy
notice.
you,
Yeah, he didn't
but
say I'm
I'm
going to
proud
drain
of
the
it."
swamp. He actually detailed step 1, step 2,
Yeah,
step 3, step 4.
I'm going to dismantle the ATF. The
Mhm.
FBI is going to go away. The
Mhm.
Department of Education, all of that money, it's going to go back to the taxpayer. And he laid out the legal case for why he can do that.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be honest. I turned a little bit gay for him, which as a
It was
as
it
a
was it was it
conservative
was just the water is all it was,
as a
Brian. It's
as a
the chemicals
conservative
in the water.
born again Christian, it pains me to say that, but I kind of love the man now.
Turn the frogs gay.
Turn the frickin' frogs gay.
No, what I loved
yeah.
about Vivek was even with all of that, like that stuff was awesome. I just loved it when he came out and said, "I want every other candidate to debate me live with no cue cards and no teleprompters." And I was like, "Damn." Like, get on my level. That dude can he can think circles around every other candidate on both sides.
I hereby pledge my sword to Vivek Ramaswamy. But
like, you listen to him speak and you can tell he's brilliant and he's running on all cylinders.
He's sincere. He's not a political opportunist. He believes what he's saying and he means it. And I'm afraid for him.
It's a rough and tumble world. Dog eat dog.
I hope he's got security.
He does. He's a billionaire. He's got security.
Like good security that can't be bought off or corrupted or.
Hopefully he's got some of those. What are those? He's got some. Crap. What are they called? Who are the Indian badasses with those knife swords? No, the Indians.
The Indians. With dot Indians?
With the dot Indians.
We're talking about Ramaswamy, fool.
I'm talking about Vivek. He's an Indian. He's Hindi. By the way, he's Hindi. He'll be our first.
Are you talking about Sikhs?
No, I don't think so. No, the Indian dudes with the sword things.
I think you're talking about Sikhs.
I didn't think they were. I don't think it was Sikhs. Maybe it's Sikhs.
They got with the turbans.
Yeah, they wear turbans. I know Sikhs wear turbans.
Those are Sikhs. I think you're talking about. But as much as I agree with him, you think the past like dozen presidents we've had were Christians?
They were proclaimed Christians.
I'd rather have a devout Hindu than a bullshit
We're not talking about what you'd rather have. We're talking about
the fact that we've never had a non-Christian
actually being a thing. We've never had one even close.
Well, yeah, but the thing is,
who's the closest? Bernie Sanders, like a total atheist.
But he wasn't. Gurkhas are who I'm talking about, by the way, not Sikhs.
Oh,
okay. I'm not familiar with Gurkhas, but
really?
Yeah, but as much, obviously, I'm a fan of Vivek Ramaswamy, but there's no political solution to our problems. We can.
No, you can't legislate your You can't legislate your way out of being apathetic and bad people. No, I agree.
We can manage our problems for the short term.
Start with legislation, though. He starts with what it means to be an American.
Well, but yeah, I mean, he can model a good philosophy. but it's being president doesn't put him in a particularly advantageous position to change the culture necessarily. In fact, I don't think he's electable precisely because our culture is so corrupt.
No, but this conversation that swirls around him can.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It can begin to inform and change the conversation. I think that's right. So just real quick, guys, I'm gonna pull a Jamie from the Joe Rogan show. I had to look up the Gurkhas since I couldn't remember what they were called, who they were. So they're Nepalis. They're Nepali speaking Indians. They served with the British Army, World War II, that kind of thing. And that big sword I was trying to think of, the big knife, is called a kukuri. But Gurkhas are dope. And they're
got an army of those.
They're from Nepal. Viva Nepal! Viva Nepal!
I want the
Is that from
the Golden Child? Yeah.
I want the knife.
Yeah. Let him ask again, please. Yeah.
That's a good movie.
I don't know if it's a good movie, but I enjoyed it.
Right.
It's a great movie. It's one of the best. It's Eddie Murphy's Citizen Kane.
Okay.
I mean, it's good.
I'm kidding.
I mean, Eddie Murphy was he ever in a really good movie, like a genuinely good movie? I mean, I guess Beverly Hills Cop.
Tried.
Beverly Hills Cop was good. That was solid.
Vampire of Brooklyn.
Dreamgirls.
I think Beverly Hills Cop is his best as a genuine movie, right?
Dreamgirls.
Dreamgirls?
He got nominated for an Academy Award in that movie.
Like
Really?
that means anything.
Well, I mean, but he was genuinely really good in it. So
Isn't that the one with Mariah Carey or whatever in it?
with Jennifer Hudson and Beyonce.
That's
yes,
what I meant.
and
That's what I
Jamie
meant.
Foxx.
That's what I meant. Yeah. I didn't watch it.
All those light-skinned black chicks, they all look the same. Beyonce and Mariah Carey.
But to our societal issue, at the risk of sounding pompous and self-promoting,
You wrote a blog about it?
I have a blog.
Nice.
It's thethirdhelix.com.
Link in the
I wrote an
description below.
article. Yeah. The article in question is a plan of action for an American Renaissance. It's lengthy.
How
but
many 100 pages is it?
Lengthy by your standards?
Because if Brian said it's lengthy, y'all better pack a lunch. I'm sure it's good. I'm sure it's good though.
You better pack a Lunchable.
Lunchable. You can pack a charcuterie board.
Yeah.
with grapes.
Yeah.
What was that?
yeah.
What was that one thing? The shackle box. They put the charcuterie board in the tackle box so you can take it with you.
Yeah, that's right.
But no, it's if I do say so myself, I put a lot of thought into it.
I hope so.
I think I'm onto something. I think it's I believe I have identified our problems and the way to resolve them. It's actually very simple, but it's not easy.
If it's very simple, what's the Cliff Notes answer? What's the executive summary?
Well, we need a resurgent, revitalized, redefined church.
Okay.
And the way to do that is we need to revolutionize our epistemology, our soteriology, and our ecclesiology according to the Divine Council worldview.
You better back up.
I provide definitions for those three things. They're actually pretty simple and straightforward.
Yeah, it's simple. Sounds simple.
And they all revolve around our misdefinition of the word faith as Christians.
So Brian, funny quick aside. I actually thought about you on Sunday. So today's Monday for those listening at home. I thought about you yesterday while I was at church because my pastor's sermon was about stuff, but he actually said, he put up on his slide, Christology, soteriology, ecclesiology, and what was the other one?
Epistemology.
He didn't use epistemology. He used another word. There was 4 words that he put up. But basically he was saying your Christology informs your soteriology, which then informs your ecclesiology. Missianology was the fourth one that he was talking about. But basically, he was explaining it in like an equation that you have to start with who you believe Christ is and was, because then that determines how you interpret and understand what's in the Bible, which then informs what kind of a church you are, which then informs what kind of missions and work you do in the world. I thought that was interesting, and I was thinking about you when he said that. And then he just, as a kind of a throwaway, he made a comment about. In fact, I was going to go find the actual clip just so I could link it to you from because it's on YouTube. Links in the description. City Church, Moore, Oklahoma. But he actually said, when you go to heaven, he's like, we're not going to go to heaven as these disembodied souls and like have wings and flutter around in heaven. Like heaven's going to come back to earth. And I was like, what just happened?
He's been listening to our podcast.
That gives me hope, man.
But it was funny that both of those things were in his sermon yesterday.
So he said that in a congregation full of churches, Christians.
Yeah, I told you, bro. We're not all lost.
Did they riot?
No.
Oh.
No.
Were there reactions? Were there gas?
I was upstairs in the booth. I don't know. Like I was up there running things. There was two other guys in the booth with me doing our production, and I turned and looked at my our production team lead, because I'm not the team leader. I just run the thing. I have a guy who's like on the board and does the stuff. And I said, "You do know how that right there was really it's a little."
That was ballsy.
And he just kind of was like, "Yeah, And I don't know that, I don't know how much he was paying attention to it or didn't really understand it, but I was like, look, I said, if you went down into our congregation outside of today's service and said, hey, what happens when you die? Most people say that. And, we had a quick conversation about it, but it was just funny. In fact, I'm going to pull the link up for you after we drop this call, Brian. I'm going to shoot it over to you.
Okay. But my concern, either they're already familiar with this and they're on board with it, so that wasn't shocking, or they're apathetic and weren't really paying attention and didn't understand the implications of what he said. I hope it's the former.
You do realize there's other options there, right? Like people go, that's interesting. I wonder what he meant. Or somebody goes, I don't know if I agree with that. And I want to go talk to the pastor and find out what he meant. You have a very uncharitable disposition when it comes to Christians.
Do I?
You just did.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Case in point.
Well,
Rewind. Run the tape back.
the first option was pretty charitable.
No, it wasn't. The first one was it was either old hat or they don't give a shit.
No, not all.
You left no other option on the table.
Like we already know
Well-
this guy's he's probably been drinking last night. We don't know what it is.
Well, my first option was that this is already been explained to them and they're already on board and they've already accepted it, which would be awesome.
Mhm.
Or they're just like, oh, I don't know what he just said.
Right,
It's
but the point is there's all other options. Someone could have been like, they could have looked at their wife and been like, hell's he talking
because
about?
typically when
what did you
I say this to Christians, they're shocked and offended by it.
I know, and I agree with you. And I've tried to tell you though, there are pastors out there preaching the word.
All right. Well, I don't think I'm being uncharitable. I was charitable on the one option. I didn't list an exhaustive range of.
You said
of
either or. You implied two options.
That was pretty
I don't
binary.
think you're being very charitable with me right now.
I'm not at all. I'm going to hold you to account.
Well,
I want our listeners to know that I'm the charitable one.
Hmm.
And when I'm the charitable one, we're in trouble. So you need to be more charitable.
I'm pretty charitable.
You have your moments of charity.
Well, thanks. Thanks for being charitable.
you're not very charitable in attributing charity to people, Matt.
Well, that was like Dre in our chat when he was like, I want to get in. I was like, I think we should. He's like, well, thanks for the permission. And I was like, what the hell is that?
I said that so tongue in cheek. I knew we'd get some kind of reaction.
Oh,
Well, glad you approved.
I'm glad you gave me permission.
I was laughing as I typed.
Yeah.
Wow.
So is that it, boys?
All right. I think I'm tapped
I
out.
think that's a reasonable
you?
conclusion. I think that was a good chat.
Now
Good.
that you
So
haven't
for
seen my
those listening
shirt.
at home, we had teased coming into this that we were going to talk about, what happens
Indeed.
when you die, near death experiences and those kinds of things. But we all went off and watched a movie that we thought was important, so we wanted to talk about it. So we'll get into that next week.
Yeah, sorry if anybody who tuned in just wanted to hear that. We'll be here next week.
Yeah, don't apologize. They liked it.
I didn't mean it. I'm not
Hey,
charitable
it's one of
enough
two
to
things. Either they
apologize to
liked it
people.
and they'll come back, or they didn't. And that's it.
And we'll never see them again.
That's so uncharitable, dude.
Forever.
That's so uncharitable.
Or they really liked it and they want more content.
Right? They're like, can you guys
They
just
want this to
review
be a normal
movies?
political show.
We just need to do movie reviews and politics instead of you guys don't know shit about the Bible, but we all talk about movies and Vivek and the presidential election.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
All right, boys. We
talk.
will talk to you next week.